The rain lashed against the towering glass facade of the Grand Meridian Hotel, its sleek silhouette slicing through the stormy Seattle skyline. Neon lights flickered, their cold, electric glow painting the wet pavement in hues of blue and white. A lone man stood outside, his worn duffel bag slung over one shoulder, his other arm shielding a small figure huddled beneath his coat. Marcus Hayes, 38, was a single father with eyes that carried the weight of countless sleepless nights. His 5-year-old daughter, Lily, shivered against him, her tiny hands clutching his jacket as the wind howled. Inside, the lobby was a world apart. Polished marble floors gleamed under the soft glow of chandeliers, the air thick with the hum of wealth and privilege. Guests in tailored coats glided past, their laughter muffled by the storm outside. But at the front desk, a young clerk named Brandon Wells, his suit crisp and his sneer sharper, barely looked up from his computer. "No vacancies," he snapped, his eyes flicking over Marcus's faded jacket and scuffed shoes. "Try the motel down the street. They might have your kind of room." The words were a blade, laced with disdain, as if Marcus and his daughter were intruders in this pristine world. Behind him, a couple in designer coats was ushered toward the elevators with warm smiles and a bellhop trailing their luggage. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice remained low, deliberate. "Check again," he said, sliding a damp, faded reservation slip across the counter. Brandon scoffed, flicking the paper back with a dismissive wave. "Systems down. Move along." The lobby fell silent, the weight of every gaze settling on Marcus. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing injustice, but no one spoke. Marcus's hand rested gently on Lily's head, his calm demeanor unshaken. Something in the way he stood, steady, unyielding, hinted that he wasn't leaving, not without a fight. Marcus was a man who carried loss like a shadow. 3 years ago, his wife, Sarah, had died in a car accident, leaving him to raise Lily alone. He'd traded his corporate suits for night shifts at a warehouse, scraping by to keep a roof over their heads. His posture spoke of exhaustion, but his eyes burned with resilience, a quiet strength forged in hardship. Tonight, he wasn't just a tired father seeking shelter from the rain. He was a man with a secret, one that Brandon Wells, the smug 25-year-old clerk, was about to underestimate. Brandon was the epitome of privilege, the son of the hotel's assistant manager, hired not for skill, but for connections. His smirk was a weapon, his tone dripping with assumptions as he dismissed Marcus, pegging him as a drifter who didn't belong in the Grand Meridian's polished world. Behind the desk, the night manager, Ms. Evelyn Carter, observed from her glass-walled office. Her sharp eyes missed nothing, but she chose silence, her lips pressed into a thin line. She was in her late 40s, her pristine blazer and pinned-up hair projecting authority, yet her inaction spoke louder. The power imbalance was stark. Brandon held the keys to the hotel. Marcus held only a soggy piece of paper and a child's trust. But the way Marcus's fingers traced the edge of that reservation slip, slow and deliberate, suggested he was far from powerless. His calm was a storm gathering strength, and the lobby was about to feel its force. The hum of the lobby faded as Marcus leaned forward, his voice steady as steel. "I made this reservation 3 months ago. Confirmation number 472-19. Check it." Brandon rolled his eyes, his fingers tapping lazily at the keyboard, more performance than effort. "System still down. Like I said, no rooms." Lily tugged at Marcus's sleeve, her small voice trembling. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" He knelt, his callous hand brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "No, sweetheart," he whispered, his eyes softening. "We're exactly where we need to be." He stood, his presence commanding despite his worn appearance. Brandon's patience snapped, his voice rising. "Look, man, you're holding up the line. Take your kid and go." A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Some guests exchanged glances. Others stared at their phones, avoiding the scene. A businessman in a tailored suit, waiting nearby, muttered under his breath, "Just let him stay. It's pouring out there." Brandon shot him a glare, his entitlement flaring. "Rules are rules. No ID, no room." Marcus reached into his pocket, pulling out a worn leather wallet. "I have ID," he said, sliding it across the counter alongside the reservation slip. And the reservation. Brandon barely glanced at the documents, his lip curling. Doesn't matter. You don't look like you can afford this place. The words hung in the air, heavy with prejudice. A few guests gasped softly, their sympathies shifting toward Marcus. The tension thickened, the lobby of pressure cooker waiting to burst. Miss Carter emerged from her office, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. Is there a problem, Mr. Wells? Her tone was neutral, but her eyes flicked to Marcus, assessing him like a puzzle she hadn't yet solved. Brandon smirked, leaning back in his chair. Just handling it, ma'am. This guy's causing a scene. Marcus met her gaze, unflinching, his voice low but firm. I'm not causing a scene. I'm asking for the room I paid for. A flicker of curiosity crossed Carter's face, her fingers twitching, as if sensing a shift in the air. She nodded to Brandon, resolved as quickly. Marcus's hand tightened on Lily's, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I intend to. Marcus slid his phone from his pocket, his movements precise, deliberate. Since your system's down, I'll check my email, he said, his tone calm but laced with purpose. He opened a confirmation email from the Grand Meridian, dated 3 months prior, complete with a payment receipt and booking details. The screen glowed in the dim lobby, drawing the eyes of nearby guests. Brandon snorted, his bravado faltering for a split second. Anyone can fake an email, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. The onlookers leaned in, their murmurs growing louder, sensing a tide turning. Marcus didn't blink. Call your regional office, he said. They'll confirm it. Brandon hesitated, his fingers hovering over the phone. Miss Carter raised an eyebrow, her voice sharp. Do it. Brandon dialed, his smirk fading as he spoke in hushed tones to the regional office. The conversation was brief, and when he hung up, his face was taut. They're checking, he muttered, avoiding Marcus's gaze. Marcus nodded, unruffled. While you're at it, ask for Mr. Ellison. He knows me. Brandon let out a forced laugh, trying to regain control. You know the regional director? Right. Sure you do. But the crowd wasn't laughing. They sensed something brewing, a shift in the balance of power. The phone rang back, and Brandon's expression crumbled as he listened. He hung up slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. They found your reservation, but it's not in our system here. Marcus tilted his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Funny how that happens. Maybe check who owns this hotel while you're at it. The crowd's murmurs grew into a low hum. Their curiosity piqued. Miss Carter's eyes narrowed, her voice cutting through the tension. Who are you exactly, Mr. Hayes? Marcus's smile deepened, a glint of steel in his gaze. Just a guest, he said. For now. The lobby was a crucible, every whisper and shuffled foot amplifying the tension. Brandon, now visibly flustered, typed furiously at the computer, his fingers slipping on the keys as he tried to save face. Ms. Carter stepped closer, her voice sharp and impatient. Mr. Hayes, if you're implying something, say it plainly. Marcus set Lily gently on a nearby velvet chair, handing her a worn stuffed bear from his bag. She clutched it, her small face bright with trust. Then he turned, his voice slicing through the room like a blade through silk. I'm not implying anything, Miss Carter. I'm stating a fact. I own this hotel. The words landed like a thunderclap. The lobby froze. Guests mid-step, bellhops pausing with luggage. Even the soft jazz from the speakers seemed to falter. Brandon let out a nervous bark of laughter. You? A homeless guy owns a Grand Meridian? But Ms. Carter's face drained the color, her eyes darting to the tablet in Brandon's hands. She snatched it, her fingers scrolling to the corporate database with growing urgency. Her breath caught as a screen displayed a name, Marcus Hayes, sole shareholder, Meridian Holdings, LLC. The crowd gasped, a wave of shock rippling through the room. Brandon's jaw dropped, his bravado collapsing like a house of cards. That's impossible, he stammered. Marcus's voice was ice, each word deliberate. 3 years ago, I bought this chain quietly, kept my name off the public records. I don't run the day-to-day operations, but I signed the checks, including yours. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card, Simple, black, embossed with a Meridian Holdings logo. Ms. Carter's hands trembled as she took it, her eyes confirming its authenticity. The crowd was electric. Whispers turned into open chatter. The power had shifted, and Marcus stood at its center, unyielding. Marcus stepped forward, his presence filling the lobby like a gathering storm. "You denied me a room because of how I look," he said, his eyes locked on Brandon, who shrank back, his earlier arrogance gone. "Because I'm a single dad with a beat-up bag and a little girl. You assumed I didn't belong." His voice was calm, but every word carried the weight of truth. He turned to Ms. Carter, who stood frozen, clutching the tablet. "And you let this happen under your watch. Explain." Ms. Carter opened her mouth, her voice faltering. I didn't know, Mr. Hayes." "The system." Marcus cut her off, his tone unyielding. "The system didn't fail. You did. You saw a man with a child, soaked from the rain, and you chose to look away." The crowd was silent, hanging on his words. Lily, oblivious of the drama, hugged her bear, humming a soft tune. Marcus's gaze softened for a moment, his love for her anchoring him. Then he turned back, his voice firm. "Brandon, you're done here. Ms. Carter, you'll answer to the board tomorrow." Brandon's face crumpled, his voice cracking. "You can't fire me. My dad—" Marcus raised a hand, silencing him. "Your dad works for me too. Pack your things." The crowd erupted in murmurs, a few guests clapping softly, their approval quiet but undeniable. A woman in a red coat whispered to her companion, "He had it coming." The businessman from earlier nodded, a faint smile on his face. Justice wasn't loud. It was surgical, precise, and Marcus wielded it with the calm of a man who'd fought harder battles than this. By morning, the rain had cleared, and sunlight streamed through the penthouse suite's floor-to-ceiling windows. Lily's laughter echoed as she bounced on the king-size bed, her stuffed bear flopping beside her. Marcus stood by the window, his silhouette framed against the Seattle skyline, his face calm but resolute. Downstairs, Brandon was escorted out by security, his belongings stuffed into a cardboard box, his head bowed in shame. Ms. Carter, humbled, had submitted her resignation at dawn, but Marcus rejected it with a single sentence. "Fix this?" He'd handed her a list of demands: mandatory staff training, new protocols for guest treatment, and a personal audit of the hotel's operations. "Make this hotel what I meant it to be," he told her, his voice steady but kind. She nodded, her eyes wet with a mix of gratitude and shame, and promised to start immediately. The corporate office moved swiftly, issuing a public statement, a full review of staff practices, with Marcus overseeing the changes. Guests from the night before had posted videos of the confrontation online, their captions praising the mystery owner who'd turned the tables. The clips went viral, amassing millions of views, and the Grand Meridian became a symbol, not of luxury, but of accountability. Marcus didn't revel in the attention. He sat with Lily as she colored, her crayon sketching a house with a bright yellow sun above it. He smiled, his heart full, knowing this fight wasn't just for them. It was for every person who'd ever been turned away, judged, or dismissed. As the sun climbed higher over Seattle, Marcus's voice carried in a quiet narration, its cadence heavy with reflection. This wasn't about one night or one room. It's about every time someone's judged by their clothes, their skin, or the weight they carry. "I built this hotel to be a refuge, a place where everyone belongs, not just those who fit a certain mold." The camera lingered on Lily's drawing, the house vibrant with her innocence, the sun a beacon of hope. Marcus's voice softened, but its resolve was unbreakable. "I'll keep fighting to make it right, for her, for me, for everyone who's ever felt invisible." The screen faded black, his words lingering like a promise. This wasn't about one case, it's about every case like it. The weight of his truth settled over the viewer, a call to see the world differently, to challenge the assumptions that divide us. The final frame held Lily's drawing, a simple image that spoke louder than any corporate statement ever could. Text appeared on the screen, bold and unyielding. If this story made you think, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories that matter. The words pulse with urgency, a reminder that change begins with awareness, with stories that refuse to let injustice go unnoticed. 2.3S